Hi everyone, Stjepan here. In today's video I'm going to show you rounds 2 and 3 from Zadar Open, which I played at the end of December. So after round 1, which I won, I got paired against an unrated opponent, which is very unfortunate. If you've never played tournaments, then the Swiss system works in a way that you get paired in the first round if you are the first person on the rating list of the tournament, then you get paired with the first player above the middle. So if you are the first on a list of 100 players, you will play against the 51st. After round 1, the same system is applied for all people who have an equal number of points. So all the people who win in round 1 get paired against each other. My opponent did not win in round 1. She did not play because there was an odd number of players and she was the lowest rated player, so she got a free point. So basically I was unlucky because I was really close to playing a strong game in round 2, and this way I played against someone lower rated, which is unfortunate because my biggest goal when playing tournaments is to play against higher rated players. That I think is the most important part. In any case, I'm going to show you the round 2 game quickly because it really wasn't very interesting, and then I'm going to show you my round 3 game, which was very interesting. Okay, so my unrated opponent plays pawn to e4. I played the Caro-Kann. Obviously I had nothing to prepare with. This was probably her second game of chess, or the first one, because she didn't play in round 1. So knight f3, d5. And here I would just like to spend a brief moment on pawn to d3, which my coach ended up playing in Rabat's Open, in the second tournament I'm going to show you, which is a very interesting new line. It has been played about 400 times. That's an opening I've started studying with both colors, so just bear that in mind if you're a Caro-Kann player and you don't know it. This endgame after d4 is extremely interesting. She did not play d3, I just wanted to mention that. Okay, she played the two knights. I played bishop to g4 and she played a strange move, bishop to e2. Now black is basically equal after e6. I get to put my bishop outside of the pawn chain. I don't have to give it up for the f3 knight, and I also played e6, so there will be no trouble along this diagonal. After ed, I can simply recapture ed and have an equal game. Okay, d3. Now I don't want to spend too much time on these moves because d3 doesn't make too much sense. Now black is probably even slightly better. I don't know. Okay, knight d7, h3. As I said, I don't have to give up my bishop. g4, bishop g6, bishop e3. And this bishop on e3 is misplaced, and I can exploit it immediately with bishop to b4, threatening to win the pawn on e4. And if e5 is played, then firstly I get the f5 square after something like h5 and provoking gh or g5 or taking, and then the rook is loose. Also I could just go queen c7, put double pressure on the pawn, provoke d4 and then weaken the c2 square. So she just went back bishop to d2, so obviously I've gained the tempo. Knight e7, just developing, knight a4, and this almost loses a pawn. It doesn't, but after bishop takes d2, she would have to take with the f3 knight, which means that another piece is misplaced, and which means that I can pin the knight and threaten the e4 pawn again. If knight d2, then queen a5 threatens the knight on a4, then the knight has to go back to c3. And the position is unfortunate. All the pieces are in the way of each other. She took with the queen though, and now I even win material. The bishop e4. She played knight c3. I took on f3. Bishop takes f3, and knight e5 is the simplest, I think, the simplest way to win. Doesn't force a queen trade, but it basically does, because if I get to play knight f3 with check, then that could be even worse. So queen d8, rook d8, bishop g2, castles. I played rook d2, which I don't think is precise, because after rook ac1, knight g6, she can play knight e4, and basically I should go back. I don't have anything better, so I did go back. Rook fd1, knight f4, threatening knight e2 check, which she didn't see. And now the game is just over. Knight e2 check, king h1, knight c1, rook c1, and I'm going to show you the whole game because I promised to show my entire games. b6, knight b7, rook d7, f4. I could take on g4, but I wanted absolutely no complications. So I just took on b7, fe5, rook c7, rook d1, c5, and now all I have to do is push my pawns forward, open up the lines, making luft for my king, and now the bishop is pinned. She cannot take on a6 because I win the bishop. She played king g2, and after rook fc8 she did take on a6, so I won the bishop. Rook c2 check, king g1, rook b2, h4, rook bb1. I took, she took, I took on h5, gh5, rook f5. I'm just winning all the pawns. I'm a rook up, so I'm just going to go through the moves. It wasn't very interesting. Started making a mating net, and this was checkmate. Okay, so that was round 2. And on the second day of the tournament, as it usually happens, it's a double round. So round 2 is played in the morning, round 3 is played in the afternoon, so at least I got to rest. My game was over in I want to say half an hour, maybe a bit more. Okay, in round 3 I'm playing the Croatian women's champion, Ena Cvitan. Excuse me, I may sneeze. She's rated 2200, but her rating was higher than that, and she's a very strong player. I'll just show you the game. So I played d4. We went into the mainline London system. This, if you don't know it, you can watch my series on the London, but this is basically the main position of the London after bishop to g3, castles, and bishop to d3. And in this starting position, there are several things black could do. I think the best way for black to play is rook e8. Queen e7 could lead to that famous trap. Again, if you haven't seen my video on London traps, it's going to be relevant for this game and, well, for most of my London games. She played b6, and now this is a crossroads at which, if you're a Croatian player or a Serbian player, or if you've read Nikola Sedlak's book on the London system for white, which is a great book, by the way, then he recommends queen e2, and queen e2 is the move that most people know. This is the main line. After bishop to b7, white continues rook d1, rook e8, and e4. And the best move for black is bishop to e7, allowing e5, and after knight h5, pawn to a3, I think, is the line, and then g6, and I think queen e3. I'm not too sure. You can check that out for yourself. But I played a line which she didn't know. She thought that I made a mistake. We analyzed after the game. I played e4 straight away, which is a very respectable move, and actually far trickier than queen e2. So if you watched my video on London traps, then you know that after d4, knight e4, knight e4, bishop e4, bishop to b7, there's this move dc, and bishop takes is the only move, because if bc, then I win the bishop, and after bishop takes, queen a4. And now there's double pressure on the knight, and this is not easy to defend. Rook c8 is the only move, and after rook d1, queen e7 is the only move. Otherwise, there's bishop h7 and stuff like that. So that's very tricky. The alternative is what she played in the game, the best move, bishop to e7, allowing e5 once again. But it's not the same thing that happens after those queen e2, rook d1 lines, because d4 is loose, and also the knight on d2 can be hanging, or not hanging. White could be forced to recapture it with the king in some variations. She played knight h5, which is the best move. And here I started thinking, because I hadn't looked at this variation for about a month, and I honestly did not expect her to play b6. I'd prepared something completely different. So I knew the line, but I needed to spend some time. Up to this point, we played basically instantly. She spent some time after e4. Okay, so knight g5. And the idea is that after bishop g5, queen h5, and pawn to g6, the queen drops back. Black wins a pawn, cd4, but white has an extremely strong initiative after h4. Bishop d2 isn't that good in this variation because I could just take with the queen, so bishop to e7, and now h5. And here she made her first mistake. The fact that black is a pawn up doesn't really amount to much in this position because black's king is about to be blown open and white has a strong attack. So the main way to play this position, which I could not remember during the game, I knew that something like this should be played, is dc3, and I would have recaptured bc3. And now, actually, the most commonly played move is king to g7, which may seem absurd, but that is the most common move, preparing to defend with the rook if the lines should open. White plays rook d1 here in the 10 games that were played, and bishop to d7 and bishop to b1. But in our game, she played g5. And now again, I'm at a huge crossroads. So here I started spending a lot of time. I should say that at this point, we both had more than an hour on the clock. And I have two options here. The main thing is, do I allow h6? And the problem with h6 is that my attack has been prevented, but if she does play h6, let me just play a random move, like let's say rook to d1, and she plays h6. Then I have a very simple plan. I'm going to play knight f1, knight h2, knight g4, putting pressure on h6, and in the event of f5, for example f5, I take, bishop takes, I still play knight h2, I get the g4 square for free. The problem is that the center gets blown open after e5, my king is still on e1, and the bishop could always exchange on g4. So it's not that simple. That being said, her king is completely naked and white should be better. But if I don't allow h6, that means that I have to play h6 myself, which gives me a lot more options. I could occupy the g4 square regardless of that, of course. I could get my knight into g4, but it's not as strong if it's not putting pressure on h6. And it's not as strong because there's a pawn on h6 which I cannot capture because it's a white pawn. But I played h6 anyway. It seemed a principled way to play. Okay, now she needs to do something about her king and about her development, so f5 is probably the strongest move, and I'd expect it. F5. I have to take, otherwise I'm just worse, so takes, bishop takes. And when I was analyzing this game with my coach, this was the point at which he wasn't happy with my choice. He wasn't happy with my move. So what I was thinking about during the game is this rook on h1 doesn't really do anything anymore. Excuse me, I'm never going to have an h-file attack when there's a white pawn on h6, so I should castle. What does black want to do? That's the most important question, which will lead us to a decision. So black wants to play e5. And after e5, black wants to sharpen the position on my side of the board too. So black wants to get counterplay. So if e5 is played, I want to have my king on g1. Ideally, my rook on f1 as well. So castles is a good move. The problem with that is that I thought my c3 pawn is going to hang, which I didn't think was very important, but I saw no reason to give it up if I can get my rook to c1 and put pressure on the c-file at the same time. So either rook c1 or castles. My coach thought that castles was a much better move, and here is why, and he was correct. I played rook c1. So after castles, if black does win a pawn, so takes, takes, and bishop takes, this is simply impossible, which I did not calculate during the game. I can now play rook to c1, and black is forced to give up the bishop. If bishop back to f6, then I can take the knight on c6. If bishop d2, then I play rook c6 anyway. And now the bishop is hanging. What does black do? I'm controlling the 6th rank. I'm going to get my bishop into e5. If bishop to f4 is played, then my queen gets into e5. So for example, something like this takes. If pawn takes, then queen g4. If rook takes, then queen e5. And you can see that this is going to be very scary. Okay, but I played rook c1, which is not a bad move. It's just inferior to castles because it's unnecessary. Black isn't threatening to take on c3. Okay, dc3, bc3, e5. Fine. Castles now. I'm not afraid of e4. That would simply give up the dark squares. a6. At this point, black is already slightly worse, I think. It's very hard to find a defensive plan for black, so she found rook a7, defending this way. But I think it's too slow. I played rook fd1, and the critical move that I would like to achieve is c4. The problem after c4 is e4 and knight d4. So before I can play c4, which is meant to provoke d4, giving me the e4 square for my knight, I need to move my knight from d2, either to f1, f3, or b3. b3 has to be the best square. And then I can play c4, in which case e4 doesn't work because I move my bishop away and on knight d4 I can take. So that's, sorry if it's complicated, but let me show you. If I play c4 straight away without moving my knight, then c4, e4, bishop b1, knight d4. Okay, and this is uncomfortable because I'm going to give up my bishop on g3. I don't get to reroute my knight easily, and it's just complicated. The position has blown open in her favor. I played knight b3 though, and now c4 is a huge threat. She played queen e8. I played c4. The same variation now doesn't work because if e4, then I can play cd5, and if ed3, then queen e8 and rook e8 and rook c6, and her position is falling apart, hanging, hanging, hanging. Soon to be hanging. My bishop is a monster. My king is safer, and it's basically impossible. Also, if she doesn't play d4, then I'm threatening to win a pawn. Obviously, something like this doesn't work because takes, takes, and bishop h7. So again, c4, d4. And now, after knight d2, I knew that I was better. And I knew that I should be much better, but I still didn't know how to win this position. Here she played g4, and I thought for some time and played rook to b1. And what can she do? What's the line here? I was really happy here because I have knight e4 coming up. The basic idea is if I get to win this pawn, her position collapses and she loses. Also, if I get to trade my knight for this bishop, her position collapses because the g4 pawn is likely to fall. She played a5 here, which now that I've analyzed the game twice and looked at it with an engine is a losing move. This position is +5 for white. I had no idea it was +5 during the game. I'm going to tell you what the best move is. Okay, the engine thinks bishop to d8 is +2, queen d8 is +2.6, bishop d7 is +2.8. Okay, so after something like bishop to d8, white continues knight e4, threatening knight to d6, and white should be better. She played a5 instead of that. And when we were analyzing the game afterwards, we were both making the same mistake. And we were both making the same mistake over and over again, which led us to a wrong conclusion about the position, which led us to a wrong plan for white. So in the game, I took on b6 and offered the draw. She accepted, of course, because she knew that she was worse. And I thought, okay, the position is slightly better for me, but I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know how to win it. I have 2 points after 2 games, so 2.5 out of 3 is a great result against the best female player in Croatia. That was just a cowardly decision, and Had I kept playing, I don't know if I would have won, but probably some things would have become clearer and I may have won. So here is the issue. Here's the main issue. We both thought that after knight to b4, so here, after rook b6 we agreed to a draw. We both thought that after knight b4, I have to play bishop b1, because this bishop is my key attacking piece. And then we thought, okay, bishop d8, what happens? Is my rook trapped? I have to play rook b5, then bishop d7, then she's hanging on e5. I don't know. Bishop b1 is just an unnecessary move. So here is, okay, during my analysis, I found a win. Then I analyzed the game with my coach and we concluded that this is easily winning for white. And then when I checked the game with an engine, it was absurdly simple. Of course, the position is just over. I just continue knight e4. If she takes my bishop, then I can just take on f6 with check. So knight takes d3 is impossible, first of all. So bishop to d8, and now I simply continue rook takes knight, and her position falls apart. Pawn takes, and knight d6, and that's it. Let's say queen d7. Yeah, not taking there straight away, but queen e5, and that's it. Bishop f6 is the only move. Queen h5. That's it. Her position is just falling apart. There are other continuations though, but this is just crushing. Alternatively, after rook takes b6, if she plays bishop to d8, this is a nice line, then c5 is absolutely winning. If she takes, then I take, rook b7, bishop c4 check. It was a clearance sacrifice. Bishop e6, queen takes g4, the bishop is pinned, queen g6, I can just take the bishop with check. King h8 I take here, and obviously we don't have to look at this. Coming back to the position after a5, there were stronger continuations than rook takes b6. I just thought, okay, I get my material back, I have a better position, I'm going to offer a draw, she's going to accept. Nice. Knight e4 was actually the strongest move, and after knight b4, knight d6, queen d8, knight c8, queen c8, and bishop to e4. Extremely strong. I mean, what does she do? If she doesn't do anything, I don't know. It's hard to find a move. Let's say a stupid move. Then I'm just threatening this. And okay, let's say she doesn't get mated, but plays something else. Okay, it's hard to find a move. I don't know. Let's say bishop g5. Then again takes and takes and takes, and here, and again, yeah, she gets mated. So basically the position was overwhelming, and when I finished the game, I talked to my coach, and I just said, okay, I didn't know how to win it. I was very confused. I had no idea how much better I was. I knew that I was better. And I'm not proud of my decision to offer a draw. I should have played on. I mean, once I become brave enough to play positions I don't understand, confidently enough to know that she doesn't understand them either, or my opponent doesn't understand them either, I'll have become a better player. Until then, people are going to get away with positions like this one. Anyway, this was rounds 2 and 3. So after 3 rounds, I was on 2.5 out of 3. A good result. I was happy. I didn't know the evaluation of this position until a week after I came home, when I got to analyze it properly. So I wasn't upset yet. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like the game. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.